Hey, 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 happy Monday. This is Florence Achama Parby, Courage and Confidence Coach for Women of Faith. And today I am going to be talking about hypnotherapy and whether hypnotherapy can ever be for Christians. But before I go into that, I just want to make sure I'm sharing this over to my group, so just bear with me for a second. I hope you are having an awesome day. The weather's been really horrible over here in the UK, lots and lots of rain, but I guess we need rain because we had a really hot and dry summer. Okay, so just bear with me 1 second. Sharing this over to my group. And I'm not planning on being here for too long, but just bear with me. Okay. Right, so can hypnotherapy ever be for Christians? The reason why I decided to do this as a live, I have also written a blog post about it, which I haven't yet published, but I will share as soon as I do, is because I am 2 months away from qualifying as a cognitive hypnotherapist. And every time I share something about it, I get inundated with, inundated is a bit of a, exaggeration, but I get quite a lot of posts, people asking me about hypnotherapy, people warning me against hypnotherapy. So lots and lots of thoughts and opinions about this. And generally it's from people. Hi, Anna. Hi, Anna. Thank you for joining. I am just talking about hypnotherapy and whether it can ever be for Christians. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because as somebody who's studying, training in hypnotherapy at the moment, I get lots of people ask me questions, sometimes warning me against it. And I just really want to share my side and also, give a little bit of information out because it just kind of seems a bit biased and a bit one-sided. And so I want to address it from a article that I was sent. It's from a Christian website called Got Questions, and they've raised 6 points as to why they feel that Christians should basically stay away from hypnotherapy. But before I go into that, I want to just explain a couple of things. One of the things I want to say is that I first became aware of or felt a pull towards hypnotherapy in around 2013. So it's taken me 5 years of praying, seeking God, reading the Bible to come to this place that I am now, where I'm studying. But even then, God in his infinite wisdom, he didn't take me down the path of studying hypnotherapy. I didn't just the course that I'm doing now isn't traditional hypnotherapy. It's a very distinct form called cognitive hypnotherapy, and it's very, very, very different from all the other types of hypnotherapy out there. And so when people do talk to me about, hypnotherapy, it's generally from the perspective of a couple of things, that they've watched something to do with stage hypnosis, and they're using that to generalize onto hypnotherapy. Hypnosis, hypnotism and hypnotherapy are very, very different. And on top of that, the area that I'm studying, cognitive hypnotherapy, is very, very different from traditional hypnotherapy. The founder of cognitive hypnotherapy, he gets called to do training for other hypnotherapists. Basically, hey Layla, he gets training to do some therapy, to do some training for other hypnotherapists, and they're always surprised at how distinct and how different cognitive hypnotherapy is. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I think it's so easy to say that we understand something when we don't. And I think especially within the Christian community, we can, and I'm not saying that it's a bad thing, obviously we need to protect ourselves from I guess things that we don't know the impact it's going to have on us. But there have been things that we have rebelled against and protested against, and now we have let them into our community with a little bit more understanding. And also I think there's been pioneers who have gone out and who have paved the way and made that understanding possible. And so when people do say to me, oh, be careful, that's dangerous, and I'm like, okay, I hear you, but A, I feel that God has led me towards this, and B, there has to be somebody who is a pioneer. There has to be somebody who goes out there. Thank you, Anna. Yeah, so hypnotherapy, it is a type of psychotherapy, definitely. And I think that not a lot of people really understand that. It's, as I said, you see the stage hypnosis. Yeah, new things are always scary. You see the stage hypnosis, and that's like mind-boggling, and you're like, how do they do that? And then we make assumptions about it, and that's basically how the human mind works. Our mind likes to understand things, and when we don't, then it can make us feel really threatened. It can make us feel scared. And so I want to just talk about some of the 6 things that were raised in this article from Got Questions. And hopefully it will just bring some clarity around hypnotherapy and what hypnosis is and isn't. So the first thing that it says is that hypnosis or hypnotism makes you lose control. So this is a big issue that people feel that, if you have any kind of hypnotherapy, that you're not going to be in control of yourself anymore. You're going to basically give your control over to somebody else. Now, by the stage, I have had hypnotherapy and have been, quote unquote, hypnotized several times through the process of training. And I can safely say that I've never lost control. I've never felt like I have not had any power, because the truth is I was always awake. I was never asleep. I was never in, that kind of like you're in a trance, and you kind of feel like you're maybe a puppet and there's a puppet master moving you around. That's a lie. That's absolutely not how it works. If you've ever been daydreaming, that's the kind of trance state that people are talking about. If you've ever been so engrossed in a book that you can't hear somebody calling your name until they change the pitch or they change the tone, that is a trance state. If you are so busy washing up and your mind goes somewhere else, that's a trance state. A trance state are things that happens to us every single day, all the time. When we are not consciously paying attention, our subconscious mind rises up. And that's really what the hypnotherapist is interested in, that period of time where you are, I guess, when mind is focused on something else. What's coming up for you then? What's the subconscious stuff coming up for you then? Because we can think on one level that we are in control, but actually a lot of the time, and people do say that 90% of the time, it's our subconscious mind that's in control, and we're just kind of operating on autopilot. And so with hypnotherapy, it's really about understanding those times when you're operating on autopilot. So you are actually never not in control. You're always able to speak. You wouldn't be able to speak and speak coherently and speak normally if you were in a trance state and the hypnotherapist had control of you. It would be impossible for the hypnotherapist to tell you to bark like a dog, and you do it unless you wanted to do it. And even with stage hypnotists, they only show you the people who are willing to allow those things to happen to them, because the other people, they wouldn't make good TV. But that's by the side. That's by the side. But the first thing I wanted to say is actually you are in control. And, you know, whenever I've had the experience, and anybody else I've seen have the experience, there's never been an issue of, no, I'm not in control. It's always the illusion of what will happen if, for example, I give up a behavior that I don't want to give up anymore. There's that fear about maybe discovering or allowing a new side of you to come to the forefront. But it's never about you not being in control anymore. It's more about being okay with the different you, with the new you that comes out of the process. And that's where most people feel a little bit of tension and fear from. And that's completely understandable, because, you know, we do all don't like change. We fear the unknown. And so that's understandable. So that's the first bit. The second point that they raised is kind of similar. They say it makes you yield up your control to another human being. And the only person that the only person that you should really yield yourself up to completely is God. And so that's one of the arguments that they have around hypnotherapy and hypnosis, that you're yielding up, you're allowing, you're freely giving your control over to somebody else. But just taking that from the first point I raised, that's not true. You're not giving your control over, in that they have control and dominion over you and you've lost your free will. That's the first thing. The second thing is this, and it's a question that I pose, is in your normal everyday life, have you ever been in a situation where you have given your control over to somebody else? Maybe in just the moment, it's just been because of peer pressure that person has said something or done something, and you've reacted instantly, subconsciously, you've responded in a way that outside of that situation, you would question yourself and say, why did I do that? I didn't actually want to do that. Or maybe you've been so infatuated with someone or the idea of something that it's made you act out of character. And I raise this because this is something as human beings we experience without anybody ever having to wave a fob watch in front of us and to send us asleep. We, in a sense, we willingly give over our control every day in certain circumstances. So this isn't something that a hypnotherapist is trained to do. This is something that we do at various times through our lives, various times through the day even. So that's the second point that I wanted to raise, that the argument against we shouldn't be giving control over to other people. As human beings, we do it. It's something that we may not necessarily want to do, but sometimes because of stuff going on inside of us, we respond automatically, subconsciously, before we're even aware, and then we question ourselves afterwards. What hypnotherapy does is it makes you aware of the things that are triggering you to act in that way. You may not know why you're responding a particular way in certain situations. Within the framework that I'm studying, cognitive hypnotherapy, we would call that a trance. You're in a trance because you're consciously, you're not in control. Something else is in control, and you're operating based on that subconscious program that's running for you. And it may be ruining your life, so it may be making you act in ways that you don't want to act. But until you deal with that, that's always going to be coming up. So that's the second thing. I may have to do this in 2 parts because it's going on a bit longer than I thought. The third point that they raised is that hypnosis leads to an altered state of consciousness. And that's true. Hypnosis does lead to an altered state of consciousness. And I've already given examples of how we enter into this altered state of consciousness every day. Even the act of visualization takes you into a quote unquote trance state, or a hypnotic trance state. Meditation does that. Prayer does that. Daydreaming does that. Reading a book, a really, really good fiction book where you're just lost in it, it does that. The reason why I'm emphasizing this is that it's not, people do make out that entering into this trance state is a demonic thing, and that the enemy, and your mind is wide open, and therefore the enemy can come in and can plant ideas into your mind and things like that. And I'm not saying that that's not the case. Don't get me wrong. I'm definitely not saying that that's not the case. What I am saying is that this is something that happens to us all the time, which the enemy has used and can use for his own purpose. So, for example, how do you think that advertising works? When you can remember something, maybe you've only been exposed to it a couple of times, but you can remember something. Or how is it that music sticks in our minds? It's because it's going straight into our subconscious mind, or the way that advertising has been put together. It's been put together in a really clever way because they know that doing so will mean that it will stick in your subconscious mind. So every day we're being exposed to subliminal messaging. That's what people call it, subliminal messaging. And you're not in a hypnotic trance when you're being exposed to this subliminal messaging. But most of the time we're defenseless against it. But what I personally love about the training that I'm doing is that it teaches you how to defend yourself against messages that you do not want to receive into your psyche, you do not want to receive into your subconscious mind, rather than just allowing everything in. So that's a third thing that I want to say. Let's see. So number 4. Okay, so hypnotism is often promoted as a simple way of refocusing ourselves and finding the answer within us. And their gripe with this is really that the answer isn't within us. The answer is we should turn to God. The answer is we shouldn't be looking for the answers within ourselves. And this is what I've said. That's not been my experience with hypnotherapy at all. They might be talking about hypnotism. I have personally found that it's helped to build my faith and trust in God. It's helped me to be actually a better version of myself by getting rid of the false beliefs, or working on the false beliefs, or the things that I've taken into myself from childhood into adulthood, things that have been implanted into my mind that haven't been of God. So not knowing and not believing who God says I am, those things that elicit us to feel anxious, that create depression, that make us feel low in confidence and have a low and poor self-esteem. Those things, by working on those things, it has actually made me more in awe of who I am and who God has created me to be. It's never once redirected my attention away from God onto myself or onto the person I'm working with. It's always made me more in awe of, oh my gosh, God has created, literally, he has made me in such a fearful and wonderful way that I'm discovering new layers to myself, and I'm discovering how my mind works, and how great is God that he can create us with such an amazing mind, and with such amazing potential and amazing gifts. It has always led me back to him. And I think it's, again, that's fear talking. I think that we can take anything and we can say it takes away from God. There's been the debate around science and whether science has taken away from God. But it's really about the person who's doing it and the person who's receiving it. Because the Bible does say where your heart is, your treasure will be also. If your heart is pointing towards God, that's where your treasure is going to be. Everything is always going to point back to God and back to the things of God. If you have issues around your own trust and your own connection with God, then yes, it's more likely going to have an impact on you, because anything would really, you'd be more easily swayed. So that's my answer to that question. Number 5. Many of the techniques used in hypnosis are shared by mystical, philosophical, and religious systems. Okay, so I personally haven't seen any of that within my training. What I have seen is that it draws on things like CBT, it draws on cognitive neuroscience, it draws on positive psychology, it draws on psychotherapy, it draws on NLP, it draws on Gestalt therapy, it draws on EFT, it draws on so many different modalities, but there's never been anything to me that smacks of the occult or the spiritual or anything like that. And as a believer, as a Christian, I would stay well away from it. I think the biggest thing, and I think this is where people do, get it a little bit confused, is they should really be using discernment on who they are allowing to work with them. Because I think that you can go and see any kind of alternative practitioner, and you're more likely to find this in an alternative practice world, where they're not going to be a believer. They're going to be have their own faith systems, their own philosophies, their own beliefs, and they're going to want to bring that into the work that they do with you. Now, it may not be the actual modality that they're using that is the problem. It's their belief systems that they're bringing into the work. And if I use hypnotherapy for an example, if everybody said, I'm not going to do this because I think that they're going to control me, or something else is going to happen, then who's going to redeem it? Who's going to redeem? And I think it's a really amazing tool, because I am yet to find anything else that really helps you understand the way that your mind works, that empowers you to use the powerful instrument that God has given us, our mind, which we use to create our reality. If no believer steps up and says, I want to redeem this for God. I want to show other believers, other Christians, how to use this amazing instrument of our minds, then of course it's going to become saturated in new age practices and things like that. It's just going to be taken over. But as I said at the beginning, there has to be people that are willing to go in and willing to redeem it, willing to sanctify it, willing to set it apart for God's kingdom. And so that people who do need it can have access to it. So that's my point on that issue. And then the last point that they raised, what did they say? I think maybe that was it, just 5 points. I thought it was 6, but it's actually 5. Okay, so those were all the points from it. I would love to know your thoughts on this, because I do understand that people do have lots of questions on hypnotherapy. It is something that's new. As I did mention, the type of hypnotherapy that I'm training in is very, very different. And that's why I did a training on it. I did a webinar where I spoke a bit more about cognitive hypnotherapy and why it's distinct from traditional therapy, hypnotherapy, and also why I think that it is so biblically aligned, that it's so faith aligned, because it's amazing, really. And I'm going to share the link that you can use to to register to watch the replay of the webinar. But it's really good, and I'm not just saying it. I'm always blown away by how much I'm learning and how much it's changing me, just to be aware of how I'm thinking, just to be aware of the language that I'm using. And it's not that it's new things, really. It's not that it's new, but it's new in the sense that we've never kind of put it together. We've never really understood how to put the bits together for it to work in a way that works and is powerful. So I want to, so I'm going to share the link to that. I'm also at the moment offering free visibility block assessments. So these are usually cost around £90, but I'm offering these free. I've only got like 7 more spaces left. If you feel that there is a block to you really stepping up, standing out, being you, being authentic, in creating the life that you want, if you feel that there's a confidence issue, if you feel that there's an inner healing issue, if you feel like there's anything about you, inside of you, that is getting in the way of you fully expressing yourself, fully being visible, fully being seen and heard, I would love for you to apply for this visibility block assessment. I will put the link for it on the description. But that's it. Any questions, please do let me know. Let me just check. Yeah. Thanks, Anna. I'm just seeing these now. Yeah. Thank you. But if you have any other comments, questions, then just let me know, and I will see you again soon. Take care and God bless.